and my name is Peng Wang. I'm the moderator of this session, and the title of this session, as you can see from the slide, is Apertium, unique free open source machine translation system for related languages, but not only. And actually, I'm particularly interested for the part for related language, but not only. And I greatly look forward to this presentation. As you can see, this presentation will be given by Gema, Sanchez, and Mikel Forcada. And I understand Mikel Forcada is the president of the European Machine Translation Association, and we're very honored to have them to give us the presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Where's the clicker? Right. So this is an outline of the talk. There's a bunch of ingredients here. We're going to be talking about Apertium and its components, about how you can actually use it, what ready-to-use products are there. Talk about Apertium as a machine translation platform, but not only. Talk a bit about licensing, the community that we have around the platform, what languages and language pairs we have, and we will also describe some success cases and where the funding for the Apertium platform comes from. So Apertium is a machine translation system that therefore provides the three components of a machine translation system, which are an engine, so the actual works of the system, the data, what actually dictionaries, rules, we'll see it now, and tools to manage them and convert them into different formats. So the engine, Apertium is what people call a rule-based machine translation system, or also people like to call it knowledge-based. And it's an open source, it's a very fast engine. It's free open source, the licensing, I'll discuss this in a minute. It's a modular engine. It does what we call in machine translation parlance shallow transfer, so it does not do a very deep analysis of the text, but rather a shallow analysis. The engine is language independent, so the engine is independent of the actual language it's going to be translating, and it has a bunch of things that make it useful, like some text format management. We can interface it to translation memories. It uses what's a technology called finite state lexical processing, what makes it particularly fast. Has statistical and rule-based disambiguation of words. When a word is ambiguous, we do statistical and also constraint-based disambiguation. And it uses a very simple structural transfer or grammar rules to translate from one language to the other. And it's based also on finite state pattern matching, which is very fast too. The engine most of the Apertium engine was developed as part of a project that started in 2004, and it's been developed ever since. So most of the engine comes from the Apertium project, but we have also hybrids for some languages where we have, for example, the Helsinki finite state toolkit, or we have the VASL CG3, which is a rule-based disambiguation engine. So rules to say that book is a noun here and a verb here. So we have the engine, now we have the data. The data is, all of the data is also free, open source, and it's written in well-specified XML formats, and it's available for a variety of language pairs. So this would be a typical Apertium language pair. So when you install your engine and you install your language pair comes with two monolingual packages for the languages A and B, so the two languages of the pair. And the monolingual package comes with a monodix, a monolingual dictionary, which contains information about inflection and conjugation. Then we have a tag set and probabilities for part-of-speech tagging. It may come with a corpus to retrain the tagger, and it comes with what we call a post-generation dictionary, which is a set of rules to deal with things like apostrophes and contractions and things like this in the target language. And then of course we have a bilingual package for AB, where we have a bilingual dictionary, and we have sets of structural transfer rules, of grammatical rules to go from A and B and from B to A. The format is typically XML based, so you can edit it and it's very self-documenting. But sometimes we use text-based files for some formats. A typical size of a language pair would be monolingual dictionaries with 10 to 90,000 lemmata entries, which means that they will probably cover 100,000 to 23 million forms in the language, depending on how inflected it is, with coverages between 85% and 97%. We have bilingual dictionaries which are also as big, and rules are usually in the hundreds. We have different levels. Sometimes some of the language pairs use a cascaded processing of rules, and we have rules in each level. So, engine, data, and now tools. The tools are, first, the data is written in a human tolerable format, XML, but it's not run in XML. It has to be transformed into a fast form. So for that we use compilers, like in computer languages. So they turn this linguistic data into a fast form. And we also have software that we use, that you can actually use software to learn some of the rules from corpora. So it's rule-based, but some of the rules you can actually learn from corpora. So I'll hand it on to Gema.
So what Mikel was explaining to you is how developers see Apertium, but we also care about the users. So we have ready-to-use Apertium products. What do we have? We have a couple of desktop applications that run in any operating system, so that you can get them. One is called Apertium Caffeine, and the other one is Apertium Simpleton. And run Apertium for any of the language pairs available in a couple of clicks. Then, of course, we have a version for mobile, because we are all mobile today. And nowadays only available for Android users. We have plugins to many of the CAP tools, and this is not a closed set of CAP tools in which we can be. So we provide a plugin for Omega T, for MakeCat, MemoCube, and Travel Studio. And for Linux users, you have double-clickable pieces of software that you can install also very quickly. So imagine that today after the dinner you go into a bar and you want to communicate with local people in Catalan. All that you have to do now that you have Wi-Fi in here is to install Apertium and choose English to Catalan. This is one of the translation directions among the other 60 that we provide. And you can go to the street, and even without connection, you will be able to use it.
So it's fully installed in this. There's not an online service. It's fully installed in your mobile phone. Yeah. It has a very small memory footprint. It's very small.
Yeah. So for those that don't want to install it at all, you can also go to the website. So we provide through apertium.org. We provide an interface for people to use it. In this interface, you will find the typical text box, so to translate short texts, but we go into a more professional scenario, and we provide also translation for documents, and we support a variety of documents, plain text, XML-based, all that you can have for documents, presentation, and spreadsheets in the LibreOffice or OpenOffice, and also in Office X format. So you can use Apertium to translate a whole document. And there's a nice feature to actually tell to the machine translation system, I want to see which words became untranslated. We prepare a star, so for unknown words it's very easy to diagnose. We are not the only ones providing Apertium portals. There are other places in which you can go and translate directly. So, for example, my company provides an interface containing all the Apertium pairs, and we provide joint translation between translation memories and machine translation. And we provide also something that is not in the Apertium portal, like navigate and translate, so that you can read an English newspaper into Spanish just by following the links as you do normally, we will be translating in the background. It is also provided through iTranslate for you, in which you can, it's very interesting, here you can have a multi-engine, so the combination of different systems to make a translation. And there are other portals where you will not find all the languages, but that are for specific, let's say, language families. So, for example, Catalan, or for example, the Scandinavian languages, and so on. So, this is as far as portals are concerned, but we also, of course, offer APIs. So that's how we are connected to Cactus and how we can connect like that to all the third-party applications.
This is me. So this is, I know this is very daunting, but this is just to show that the architecture of Apertium is a modular one. It's basically a pipeline. So text enters the first step, which is the deformator, that just basically separates the text from format, and then it goes all the way through many steps of linguistic manipulation until it's finally reformatted and you get the target language text. This modularity means that you have the initial part, the morphological analyzer and the part-to-speech tagger actually deal with the source language, and they will analyze and tag the source language. And then we have the bilingual part. We have lexical transfer and structural transfer, which means changing the words and changing the structures. And finally, you have the generation. So it's a typical, for those of you who are familiar with transfer architectures, is analysis, transfer, generation, typical architecture. So the first, the thing we say, but not only, because you can use, since this is a pipeline, by the way, for people who are familiar with the technicals of this means that you can easily break the pipeline, put things inside, change one module, put another module of your own. There's many things you can do. You can insert things, which allows you to do other things. But also you can use only part of the pipeline, so you can just only analyze, just to identify, for example, proper nouns and take them out of the text for anonymization. So you can use the dictionaries and the resources in Apertium for many tasks which are non-machine translation. One thing that I insisted a bit before is that all of this, most of the modules are based on what is called finite state technology, and it's a very fast technology which allows processing tens of thousands of words a second, which makes it possible to run it on a cheap phone or on a desktop with basically regular resources. One thing that makes Apertium, and I'll show you, makes it into a community of people who are growing it, is the licensing. Apertium has an open source license. So it's an open source license that allows people to freely distribute modified or just copies of the software wherever they want. But it's also what we call a copylefted license, which means that any distribution of any modified versions of it has to be distributed together with the source code so that programmers can actually rebuild it. So this means that since all of the improvements are clear, people can see how they're done, the result is that it creates a kind of a commons, a community of people who are developing together. Instead of having, I mean, of course we have divergent developments, and that's perfectly fine, but most of the development tends to hang around a community. So this community, I like to call this a community, I like to call it a continuum, because we have researchers in this community like myself, and we have developers like people in Promsit, and vendors too, all the way down to users. So the whole chain is a continuum. Users can actually start contributing and become power users. Vendors can customize. Researchers can test their new ideas on a platform that is easy to install and run. And then if the ideas work, they can be passed on to developers and vendors. So there's many things that you can do with Apertium. It's a continuous. There's no big difference between like the people who build it and the people who use it. So
let's take a look into the
community. Yeah.
So when we launched the first version in 2005, we were looking forward to have more languages to enhance the engine, the data, and the components. But I think that we were not really expecting what we have today as a community. So we have a very active group of hundreds of developers worldwide. They contribute to what Mikel was saying, the commons. So everybody contributes to the same, in the same place. Apertium is hosted at SourceForge, which is a portal to host free and open source projects. It was very important for that, so for attracting people to say, hey, here we are, and this is how Apertium works, and to keep a high level of documentation for everyone and a low level of entry, so contributing to language pairs is not that difficult. So that was important to build a community, to give information and to say, hey, you can do it, you can be part of it. We give support to people through a live chat, which is open almost 24/7. And when people, if everybody goes to bed, we are still having a distribution list to which you can email us. This is another way of seeing the community. Really, I look in a very famous search engine for the Apertium community, and I filter by faces. And this is the first time that I see so many Apertiumers, as we call ourselves, together, because we are really an online community, so this is how it happens. But if you talk to people and ask who's the most famous face in the Apertium community, and actually the community builder, they will tell you there is a guy called Specty. Everybody knows him by its nickname, as I know many of those people by their nickname, not by their faces. And actually, Specty is Francis Tyers, and he's here. So he couldn't be today here, but yeah, I wanted to show you. For those that like numbers, I was referring some. We are today 428 developers and 7 admins, and
none of them are active. This is like the sum of all of them.
Yeah.
Maybe about 100 are active at the same time.
It depends on.
Many people have left and many people have joined in.
So we can say, so what do they do? So every time that someone does something and contributes it to the commons, we measure it as a, hey, I did a commit for, I don't know, the last 100 entries that I added to the Spanish dictionary, let's say. So last year we had like 10,000 commits, and altogether, since the project was launched, we had like 78,000 commits.
Commits are changes. Like it could be one word, or it could be 1,000 words, or a big change in the engine. So it's hard to measure them, but it's one measure we have.
So, but we have a record for that, and we can see what was the last change was made.
And if the change was bad, we can just
go back.
undo it.
Yeah. So, as a community, we do some activities together. It was rather an anarchic community, so we decided to define a set of very basic bylaws and to have a president and a project management committee. So we run the elections from time to time. We give support as a community through mail, chat, online meetings with other people we work with, for example. We do maintenance together. We organize this, so there's someone that takes care about the tools that everybody's using, so that there's a stable version of everything, and this is working, so there are no surprises. We maintain together this documentation that can be a manual, or how to contribute to a language pair, or training material. When we go and do some training sessions, we share this material as a community as well. We organize together for some years now participation in a couple of programs from Google Hammer of Code and Google Code. So we organize this together. We go to conferences and workshops as a community, and we have language-related groups. So there's the Romance language group in which we meet and discuss about linguistic things.
So one thing that this community engages in, or two of the things that it engages in, one is just research and the other is business. So the community has Apertium, sees Apertium as a platform on which they can test research ideas. So, in fact, even we have 2 PhD theses. One is Francis Dyer's thesis, and for more than 40 publications that we know of people who are using Apertium to do like science, testing ideas on how to do machine translation. 4 master theses, among them is Gema's master thesis. And also, on the other hand, we have the business. So we have companies like PromSuite, which is our company, or Eleca, LVR, Imagine Software, offering services to other companies like Autodesk or Adobe or the government of Catalonia or 2 daily newspapers, freelancers, LSP. So we have people, not only us, people who are using this and making business out of it. So this is you, no, sorry. Okay, so what languages you have? As you said, the language is encoded in XML. Some languages contain data in other formats, but we like to call stable language pairs those language pairs that you can install and won't crash. They might translate well or not, but they don't crash when they run, etc. About 44, I think. So this would be a map of the languages. If you see the map, you see the letters are too small, but you see Spanish here. Spanish is in the middle of the. That's because basically we started there. But English is also a big hub, and you have where is Catalan? Here, Catalan is also a big hub. Because these are the languages of the people who are basically getting us some funding. But then you have different languages like Urdu to Hindi, or you have Indonesian to Malay on the other hand. So we have many language pairs. Another way to look at it is like a list like this, but it's hard to read, but you see there's about 14 language pairs. These are stable language pairs in the sense that you can install them, won't crash on you when you run a text to them. It doesn't mean that you get a good translation. We have Apertium is very good for languages which are very similar to each other, as most machine translation is. So languages like Spanish to Portuguese, or Spanish to Catalan, or Indonesian to Malay. These are easy Malaysian. These are easy language pairs, and Apertium deals good with them, and they use for post editing, as Gema will explain now. But on the other hand, we have language pairs which are more difficult, but you can use the languages to make sense of a language you don't know. So, for example, if you're French, but you know French, you don't know Breton, but you can read Breton through Apertium and make yourself get an idea of what the text says. So this is just to put these language pairs in a map. When we started in 2004 and the Ministry of Industry asked us to develop Apertium, actually funded us to develop Apertium, we released 3 pairs, Spanish to Catalan, Spanish to Galician, and as a bonus, Spanish to Portuguese. The idea was to provide the languages of Spain with machine translation, with free open source machine translation. Then, in the 5 years later, we started to add more languages like French, English, Esperanto, Romanian, Basque, Occitan, Welsh. We did have a first for Welsh to English, then Google did it. Google don't have Occitan yet, and don't have Breton yet, for example. Or Asturian. They don't have Asturian, which is a small language in Spain. So,